Glass is written and directed by M. Night Shyamalan, and this is the long-awaited end to the trilogy that started 19 years ago with Unbreakable, and it surprisingly continued with Split in 2017, and now we have Glass, and it is the concluding chapter telling the story of David Dunn and Mr. Glass and Kevin Wendell Crumb, aka The Horde, from Split. And I was really looking forward to this film. Split was a film that I actively went out of my way to see because I was really looking forward to seeing that. And it was one of the earliest reviews that I did on this channel, so it sort of has a special place in my heart. I love all the characters from both Unbreakable and Split, and this film doesn't tarnish those characters at all. It just disappoints me a bit. The characters are still great in this film, and Shyamalan has created a very unique and grounded, realistic world in which these superheroes of his exist, and we only really get to see a glimpse of that world in the first act, which I really liked. It's basically, the first act is David Dunn hunting down the Horde, and there is a really cool action scene, and the interactions between the two of them, they're really cool. You get to see the Horde doing his thing, kidnapping girls, like as he did in Split. That's the first act, and you really get a glimpse at this grounded superhero world that Shyamalan has created. Then it sort of takes a turn into the second act, where if you've seen the trailers, you know that Mr. Glass, David Dunn, and the Horde end up in this psychiatric ward of a hospital, and the psychiatrist comes in and tries to convince them that they're really not superheroes. Now, this is where the film slightly falters for me, because on the one hand, I liked how non-mainstream it felt. It really wasn't anything like anything I've ever seen before, but that's not necessarily a good thing. The film has some interesting moments, especially some of the dialogue moments in this psychiatric hospital, but it just never really engaged me. I wanted to feel something. In Split, I was really excited sometimes. It had emotion sometimes. Unbreakable has some serious emotion, because it's all about David Dunn and Mr. Glass finding their places in the world. There aren't really those strong themes in Glass. There aren't those moments of emotion that hit you, and I was just never engaged or moved by Glass. For the most part, especially in its second act, it feels like it's building towards something, and it's building and building, and then you never get to the payoff. So it just felt very anticlimactic, especially the way that it deals with its characters. The characters are still great, but the way that they finish the film, I just thought was very, very anticlimactic, especially for these main characters, some of which are 19 years old, and people have been waiting to see them on screen again for 19 years. I just thought that it was a pretty poor decision on Shyamalan's part to deal with the characters in the way that he did. In the end, I sort of walked out of Glass not really feeling anything. I couldn't really look back on one great moment of dialogue or one fantastic sequence. There are some really, really interesting scenes and individual scenes and sequences, and maybe a few one-off lines of dialogue that interested me for a brief moment, and I can look back on those moments and think of those as the standout highlights from the film, but I don't know, it just never hit me in the way that I wanted it to, and part of that might have been my expectations for it, which could be slightly unfair, but obviously I was going to have expectations, and I'm alright with the film not being what I thought it was going to be, but I just don't think that it holds up as an actual film. The characters are still the best part. Obviously, they're the ones that carry the film. It's very cool seeing them interact. There's one really cool scene with Mr. Glass interacting with the Horde when he's trying to convince the Beast to team up with him and carry out this grand plan that Mr. Glass has. Samuel L. Jackson, again, is really, really good, as is James McAvoy. James McAvoy is so good, and I just wish that him and the rest of these actors and characters were placed in a better film with a better, more interesting story. These are three very, very cool and interesting characters with very cool backstories and moral dilemmas, and they've been placed in just a very uninteresting story, which was very unfortunate. There are one or two properly decent moments of emotion that did hit me. One involving David Dunn's son, who is back from Unbreakable, and one involving the Horde near the end of the film. And the way that James McAvoy shifts through all these different 24 personalities, it's just mesmerising. And there are so many scenes where he gets to just transform quickly, just one after the other, just shifting between all these different personalities within him. And it's one of those scenes that did hit me emotionally. But for the most part, watching this film just reminded me how much I liked Unbreakable and especially Split. I really like Shyamalan's approach to comic books and the way that he attempts to deconstruct them, but I do think that his attempt to subvert audience expectations did hurt the film. Again, there are some really cool and interesting scenes and sequences, but overall I felt that the dialogue got a bit repetitive, especially in the second act when they're in this psychiatric place. But Glass is not a bad film. It's gorgeously shot. It's really well directed. Shyamalan is a very, very good director. It's just sometimes his writing lets him down. James McAvoy is fantastic again. Bruce Willis is good. Sometimes his line readings aren't that great, but for the most part, he honours the character well. Samuel L. Jackson is, again, very interesting as Mr. Glass. I just wish that more had been done with these characters, but the characters are still fantastic. It does have some interesting ideas and some genuinely exciting and emotional moments, particularly in some of the action scenes in the beginning and the end. I just wish that it had made me feel something more. I'm going to give Glass a B-. I don't know, I could have gone lower, but there is enough in this film that had me interested, especially for the first half an hour or so, maybe first half an hour to an hour. The ending has been annoying some people. I didn't really mind the ending. I just thought that the bit before the ending was very anticlimactic. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Glass. A mixed bag for me, but obviously film is subjective. I know some people that really liked this film, some people that really didn't. But yeah, if you guys have seen it, definitely let me know what you thought. I'm especially interested to hear your thoughts on Glass, because it's going to be divisive, I think. But yeah, let me know what you thought. Like, comment, subscribe, whatever you want to do. And until the next time, goodbye.